It started.
Okay. Om Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedamscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tamhadevam Atmabuddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurave Sarvalokanam Bhishaje Bhavaroginam Nidhaye Sarvavidyanam Sri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Okay, so before we start, wishing everyone happy Makar Sankranti. Hope you all had a good festival. Um, any questions from the previous week or from the other sessions? Anything that you may want to discuss? Or shall we go straight to the next shloka of Vivek Chudamani? Anyone? Okay, so looks like there are no questions. So I've projected the text here. I hope all of you can see it. If there is anyone who cannot see the text, let me
Yes,
know.
sir, I can see it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll now go to 255. Last week we covered 254. So 255. Yat param sakala vaga gocharam gocharam vimala bodha chakshusha shuddha chid ghana manadi vastu yat brahma tattvamasi bhavayatmani. Yat param sakala vaga gocharam gocharam vimala bodha chakshusha Shuddha Chid Ghanam Anadi Vastu Yad Brahma Tattvamasi Bhavayatmani. So, as I said, that fourth line Brahma Tattvamasi Bhavayatmani is repeated in every shloka for these 10 shlokas. And we already saw what is that Brahma Tattvamasi Bhavayatmani. So, I am not going to repeat it. So, the first line says Yat Param. Yat Param, that which is the supreme one. Param is the supreme one. There is nothing above that, nothing superior to that. Yat param, then sakala vag agocharam. Now, agocharam means not accessible to, not reachable by. That is agocharam. Vag is the speech, and here the word of speech, vag, represents, you can say, either words of description, or you can say it represents all the sense organs. You can have both interpretations. So what it means is Brahman is something that cannot be described. That is one meaning. You really cannot explain Brahman in terms of this word or that word, because in the Shastras, in the Mimamsa Shastra, there is a definition for what can be described by words. It's called Shabda Pravritti Nimitta. There is a concept called Shabda Pravritti Nimitta. I'll just explain what it is. Yeah. So, Shabda Pravritti Nimittam is a logical criterion defined for what can be described using words. Okay, so it has to fulfill, if you want to describe an object using some words, it has to fulfill at least one of these 5 conditions. One is dravya. Dravya means it has to be an object. When I say object, it must be accessible to one of your sense organs. You should be able to see it or touch it or smell it, or you must be able to hear some sound that comes from that. So these are all definitions of an object. Okay, so it must be accessible to one of your sense organs. So that is one meaning. And since I talked about Shabda Pravritti Nimittam, I'll tell you the other 4 criteria. It must have some guna or attribute or quality. So you must be able to say it is white, it is black, it is fat, it is thin, something like that. Some adjective you must be able to use. Okay, now we know Brahman is Nirgunam. In real terms, Brahman is Nirgunam. So you really cannot use any adjectives to describe Brahman. Even the word Brahman itself, which means infinity, it is not a really accurate pinpointing explanation or description of Brahman, because you talk about the infinity only in contrast to something finite. Okay, so in that sense, it's not a real positive explanation or description of Brahman in that way. Then Kriya. So the object that you describe must have some action. We use the word like conductor, driver, cook, and all that. A cook is one who cooks, driver is someone who drives, or conductor is someone who conducts. So Brahman has no action, it is Nishkriyam. So you cannot use any words of action also. Then Jati. Jati here means a species. Okay, so you have the species of animals, you have the species of birds, you have species of trees and plants, but Brahman doesn't fall into any of these categories. So there is no Jati to which you can assign Brahman. And then finally, Sambandha or relationship or connection. Okay, so you can say, a typical relationship that we talk about are father, mother, son, daughter, brother, sister, husband, wife, friend, manager, employee, employer. These are all relationships. But Brahman is not connected to anything. It is actually asangaha. So because of this nature of Brahman, you really cannot use any words to describe Brahman. It's a different story that we have so many Upanishads talking about Brahman, and all the Upanishads are words. That's a different thing. But really speaking, the way Upanishads describe Brahman is mostly in the negative. I said there are some 26 adjectives which we got from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which gives a list of all the negative things what Brahman is not. Asthulam, Ananu, Adirgham, Akraswam, and all that. Okay, I hope you remember what we discussed. So, describing Brahman in words is not possible, even though the Upanishads attempt doing it in so many ways. Okay, and that's the reason why we also say Neti Neti is the best way to identify Brahman. Neti, not this, not this, not this. So every object that you see, you negate, and finally the negator remains. That is the negative description of Brahman. So it is not describable by words. That is Vag Agocharam. Sakala Vag Agocharam. Okay. And it is also, another way to say is, it is not accessible to sense organs. It is not accessible to sense organs because the sense organs themselves are able to perceive other things because of Atma, because of the consciousness. There is an Upanishad which is Skenopanishad. The Skenopanishad is part of Samaveda, and it's a very small Upanishad. If you can memorize it and chant it, it will take not more than 3 to 4 minutes. Okay. So in that, there is a very brief description of Brahman, which says Brahman is the eye of the eye. Brahman is the ear of the ear. Yad vacha anabhyuditam yena vag abhyudyate tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedam yadidam upasate. Okay. Keneshitam patati preshitam manah kena pranah pratamah praiti yuktah kreneshitam vachamimam vadanti chakshuhu shrotram kavudevo inukti shrotrasya shrotram manaso manoyat vachoha vacham savu pranasya pranah chakshushas chakshuratimuchya dhiraha pretyasma lokadamrita bhavanti. So shrotrasya shrotram, it is the ear of the ear. That means the ears have the power to hear only because of the support of Atma or Brahman. The mind has the capability to behave like the mind only because of the power it derives from Atma or Brahman. Then the vak, the words that we speak, the faculty of speaking is able to speak because of the power it borrows from Brahman. Vachoha vacham savu pranasya pranaha. Even the prana is able to sustain this body and perform the function of the prana because of the borrowed, life and consciousness that it takes from Brahman. Okay, then the eyes can function as the eyes because of the Atma. So this is the Upanishad Vakyam. And in just another next mantra itself, the Upanishad says, Yad vacha anabhyuditam yena vag abhyudyate tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedam yadidam upasate. So what cannot be described by words, but that which makes the words capable of describing others. That's the meaning of that mantra. Yad vacha anabhyuditam yena vag abhyudyate. That which cannot be described by the words, but because of which the words themselves get the capability to describe other things. That is Brahman. Tadeva Brahmatvam vidhi. That alone is Brahman. Then, yen manasa na manute yenahur manomatam. That which cannot be reached by the thought. The mind, the function of the mind is a thought. That which cannot be reached by the thought, but because of which the mind itself is able to think of other things. So the source of the mind's power to think is from Atma. So this is the way the Upanishad, this Kenopanishad describes Brahman. Okay, so while we say on the one hand that words cannot describe Brahman, we still end up using so many words in an attempt to describe Brahman. That's the beauty or irony, whichever way you want to see it. Okay, anyway, so that is the first line. Yat param sakala vag agocharam. Then gocharam vimala bodha chakshushaha. Okay, but it is accessible for the jnani using his jnana chakshu. The bodha chakshu here means jnana chakshu. Jnana chakshu means by acquiring the jnanam through the teachings of the Upanishad, you acquire a certain wisdom, and that wisdom helps you to understand Brahman, and that understanding here is used in the that is the sense of the gocharam here. So the gocharam is not that you can objectify Brahman. No, you can never objectify Brahman, but you own up your true nature as that of Brahman after having undergone the Vedantic teaching by understanding the Mahavakyam like Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Prajnanam Brahma and all those Vakyams. You finally understand that my true nature is Brahman. So that is the way, that is the only way to know Brahman, understand Brahman, know within quotes. Yeah, you don't really know Brahman as an object. Brahman doesn't come in front of you and say, I am Brahman. No, that will never happen. But you have to eventually own up Brahman. That is Gocharam Vimala Bodha Chakshushaha. Vimala here means pure. And that pure, you can say either it's a glorification of the Jnanam It's a pure jnanam, it's a glorious jnanam, or you can say that that jnanam should not be polluted by any other misconceptions. So doubt-free knowledge. So that Vimala Bodha can also be understood as doubt-free knowledge, knowledge completely free from doubt. So that is the only way to understand Brahman. Shuddha Chit Ghanam Anadi Vastuyat. So Chit Ghanam, Chit here means Chaitanyam, consciousness. And Chit Ghanam means it is dense with consciousness. When we say dense, it is used to mean that it is pure consciousness. There's nothing else in it, only consciousness. Shuddham also means it is not polluted or affected by anything else. It's not mixed up with anything. There's only one thing. That one thing that is there is consciousness. Brahman, Chaitanyam, Satyam Jnanam Anantam. That is all that is there. Everything else is some kind of a shadow, some kind of a reflection. So the shadow does not pollute the original. Okay, let's say you're walking on the road and then there is a puddle of dirty water. And then as you walk, that shadow passes on that puddle. Okay, but even though the shadow is on the puddle of dirty water, you don't get dirty. So it's exactly like that. So even though the world appears to be having a lot of problems, those problems are not in any way going to affect Brahman, because the world is just a shadow. The world has a lesser reality than Brahman. So Brahman is Shuddham. So Shuddha Chit Ghanam. Then Anadi Vastu. So Anadi means it's beginningless. It has always been there. There is no beginning. You cannot find a time when Brahman was not there. Brahman has always been there. No, and Brahman is nothing but existence with a capital E. Everything that you see around you borrows its existence from Brahman. And what is this Brahman? Ultimately, it is our true nature. Our essential nature is Brahman. And so, what that also means is we have been existing from time immemorial. We have never not existed. No, in Bhagavad Gita, there is a shloka in the second chapter, in the very beginning of the second chapter, 13th or 12th shloka. Natve vaham jatu nasam natvam neme janadhipaha. In that one line, Krishna packs the entire Vedanta. Natve vaham jatu nasam. Hey Arjuna, neither you nor I were never not there. It's a double negative. Neither you nor I have never been not there means what? We have always existed. So natve vaham jatu nasam natvam neme janadhipaha. Even these other kings and soldiers that you see in front of you, they have always existed. That means the Atma is immortal. Atma is immortal and Atma has always existed. Anadi. Okay, so in that sense, Brahman is also Anadi. And so this is another view of Brahman. This 255th shloka is just another description or another view into Brahman. You will see that in all the shlokas. So even the first shloka, Jati Niti Kula Gotra Duragam, also we saw something like that, and we'll see 8 more shlokas in the same manner, the same kind of pattern. Okay, that was 255. I'll stop here. Any questions? We can talk. No one? Okay, no questions. We'll go to 256. Shadbhirurmibhirayogi yogihrit bhavitam na karanair vibhavitam buddhyavedyam anavadyam asti yat brahmatatvamasi bhavayatmani. Shadbhirurmibhirayogi yogihrit bhavitam na karanair vibhavitam buddhyavedyam anavadyam asti yat brahmatatvamasi bhavayatmani. So Shadbhihi urmibhihi ayogi. So Urmi is a wave. Urmi is a wave in the ocean or wherever. It's a wave that comes in the water. Shad means six. So Shad Urmi is a term that we come across in Vedanta and other Vedic literature. It means six kinds of afflictions that one comes across in this life or in this samsara. So whenever we talk of samsara, which kind of denotes suffering, we talk about six forms of suffering. And these six forms of suffering are called Shad Urmi, or six waves, six types of waves. So what are the six types of waves or six forms of suffering? Okay, so first I'll give you the Sanskrit words, then we'll see the English meaning. This Ashanaya Pipasa Shokam Moham Jara Mrityu. These are the six Shad Urmi. Ashanaya Pipasa Shokam Moham Jara Mrityu. So Ashanaya is hunger. Ashanaya is hunger. Pipasa is thirst. Thirst, normal thirst. When you want to drink water, that is pipasa. Ashanaya is you want to have some food. Ashanaya pipasa. Then shokam moham. Shokam means sorrow, and moham means delusion or confusion. Then jara and mrityu. Jara is old age. Old age, and it includes vyadhi or disease or bad health. Okay. So jara, old age, mrityu is death. So these are the six forms in which sorrow or suffering hits us, hits the body. So basically this jara and mrityu belongs to the Annamaya Kosha or Sthula Shariram. Annamaya Kosha. I'll talk about the Kosha because the Ashanaya Pipasa belongs to Pranamaya Kosha. Ashanaya Pipasa belongs to Pranamaya Kosha, which is part of Sukshma Shariram. And Shokam Moham actually belongs to the Manomaya Vijnanamaya Kosha. So Shokam belongs to Manomaya, Moham affects the Vijnanamaya, because when you are confused, it is the intellect that gets clouded. Okay, so Shokam hits you at the emotional level, Moham hits you at the intellectual level. So these are the six sufferings or six kinds of attacks on the individual. So Shadbir Urmibhi Ayogi. So Brahman is not affected by any of these six waves or six forms of samsaric affliction. Okay. And Yogi Hrit Bhavitam. Yogi Hrit Bhavitam. So here the word yogi refers to a jnani, someone who has undergone the Vedic Vedantic teaching and who has understood what is Brahman. Hrid Bhavitam means that yogi's mind is able to appreciate Brahman, experience Brahman, experience again within quotes. That Bhavitam, you can say experienced, understood, and all that. So Brahman is not affected by these six forms of samsara which afflict the anatma, but the same Brahman is easily understood and appreciated by the jnani's mind. So the hrid means hridayam, and hridayam very often is used to denote the mind, because in the shastras the heart is supposed to be the place where the mind is resting. We talked about Indriyam and Golakam long back. So the mind is one of the Indriyams. It's called Antakaranam, and it has a Golakam. So the heart is the place where the mind comes and rests. So when we are in deep sleep, the mind is supposed to retreat into the heart, and it goes into the heart and takes rest. That is deep sleep. That is the Shastric definition of deep sleep. So yogi hrit bhavitam. Yogi hrit bhavitam. Na karanair vibhavitam. Okay, na karanair vibhavitam means it's the same thing that we saw in the previous shloka. Indriya agocharam. Karanam here means indriyam. The word karanam here means indriyam, and it is not accessible to any of the indriyams, any of the organs, neither the sense organs nor the karmendriyam, the organs of action. You cannot touch Brahman. No, you cannot do anything else to the Brahman. So Brahman is beyond the reach of your organs. That karanair vibhavitam. Buddhyavedyam anavadyam asti yate. So buddhi avedyam literally means it cannot be understood logically. So the word buddhi actually means intellect. The buddhi word, very often we use the word buddhi in very many contexts with very different meanings. So buddhi normally would mean your intellect, your ability to logically analyze and understand things. But here the word buddhi is used in the sense of logic itself. So what this means is, you cannot understand the true nature of Brahman by merely applying principles of logic. You need the Vedas. Without the help of the Vedas, purely by applying logic, you cannot understand Brahman. So that is the buddhi avedyam here. Avedyam means you cannot know, not knowable. Vedyam means that which is knowable, that which is worthy of knowing. And here the buddhi avedyam means you cannot understand Brahman purely by logic, but you have to take the help of the Shastras, the Vedas. Only when you combine Shastras with logic, you can understand Brahman. So dry logic, we call that dry logic. When you use logic without taking recourse to Shastra or Veda, we call that shushka, what is called shushka tarkam. In Sanskrit, the word tarkam is used for logic. So shushka tarkam means dry logic. That means logic without taking recourse to Vedas and Shastras. Whereas if you apply logic after accepting Shastra, then you can understand Brahman. That is the meaning of buddhi avedyam. Then anavadyam asti yate. Now anavadyam actually means something which can be called as a defect. Avadyam means defect. Avadyam is defect. Anavadyam is defect free. So anavadyam asti yat means Brahman is defect free. It has no blemish. It is, that's why we use the word pure also. When we use the word pure in the 255 shloka, Shuddha Chit Ghanam, that word Shuddham also is the same as Anavadyam. There is no blemish, there is no defect. So Brahman is defect free. Brahma Tattvamasi Bhavayatmani. So know that Brahman is none other than you, none other than your true nature. That was 256. Okay. Are we good to go to the next 257? Are there any questions? No? Yeah, Shvetambari ma'am.
So can you please explain conflict again? Moha?
Conflict? Moha? Conflict? No, moha is confusion.
Oh, moha is confusion. Okay.
Yeah. Moha is confusion. Moha basically means your ability to analyze what is good, what is not good, what is desirable, what is not desirable, that faculty gets blocked. So, I mean, you can say that's a kind of a conflict, that's a secondary meaning, but moha really means confusion. So your intellect is clouded. We use this phrase in English, your intellect gets clouded. So you are not able to really see things clearly. So that is moha. And then that's also because you get pulled in both directions. You want to do something, but you don't want to do that for other reasons. So there is a tightrope. I don't want to say tightrope. What is it called? Where there's a game where there is a long rope and both sides pull, tug of war. Yeah. So there's a
Yes,
tug of war inside you, and you are not able to decide this way or that way. That is moham. Yeah. Is that okay?
okay, okay. Yes, sir. I just thought moha was something like greed or something, but that's not
No,
the
no.
way it is.
That is lobha. Greed is
That is lova. Okay.
lobha. Yeah. So we
Yes,
have
sir.
all these negative qualities, no? Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, and then we include ragadvesha also there. So you can think of all these negative qualities that one can possibly deal with. And so moha is of course part of that list. And so it's that which can sometimes, the word moha is also used in the sense of intoxication. Okay. So again,
Okay.
Sanskrit being a very versatile language, the same word will have different shades of meaning, which could be slightly different in different contexts. So, but here the word moha under shad urmi is confusion, intellectual clouding.
Okay, sir.
Anybody else? Any questions? Okay. So let's go to 257. 257. Bhranti kalpita jagat kalashrayam swashrayam cha sadasad vilakshanam nishkalam nirupamanavadhiyat brahma tattvamasi bhavayatmani. Bhranti kalpita jagat kalashrayam swashrayam cha sadasad vilakshanam nishkalam nirupamanavadhiyat brahma tattvamasi bhavayatmani. Okay, so Bhranti Kalpita Jagat Talashrayam. We'll first go to the Jagat and Bhranti Kalpitam. Okay, so here the word Bhranti also is something like your moha only. It's a delusion. It's a delusion that is caused by ignorance. Okay, delusion caused by ignorance. So there is actually something in front of you, but you mistakenly perceive it as something else. That is Bhranti. Okay, we give some examples for Bhranti. The typical Vedantic examples we give are the rope snake. There is a rope lying on the ground and it is semi dark. It is not very bright, it is not completely dark. So it's semi dark, and then you are walking along that path, and then there is a rope on the ground, and then you suddenly stop thinking it's a snake. Okay, that rope is kind of curved, so it resembles a snake. So you actually have a rope in front of you, but suddenly you somehow get that impression that it's a snake. That is Bhranti. That is Bhranti. Another example we give is the mirage water. So I don't know how many of you have actually experienced mirage water. Typically, it happens during summer when it is very hot and the temperature goes above 35-40 degrees. And if you're on the road, uh, at a good distance, you will think there is a puddle of water. That puddle of water, when you go near, you will see there is no water, it's only the road. That's because the sun ends up heating the air in that area, so there is a refraction, and that refractory effect, refractional effect, not refractory, refractional effect produces an effect like there is some water, but really speaking, there is no water. So that is mirage
It is
water. That, sorry, yes,
it
ma'am.
is total internal reflection. In
Yeah,
physics,
total
it
internal
is
reflection. Yeah,
reflection.
correct. Total
Yeah.
internal reflection. So that is the effect of that hot temperature, which appears like water, mirage water. Okay, that's another example. The third example we give in Vedanta is the shell silver. Let's say you are walking along the beach. In the beach, you will find a lot of these shells, and sometimes because the sunlight is so bright, the shell will shine, and that shine of that shell will give you the illusion that there is some piece of silver there. But when you really go and pick it up, you will know it is not silver, but it is shell. So that appearance of that silver is another illusion, which is bhranti. So these are all normal, normal examples of bhranti. But then what Vedanta says is this world itself is a bhranti. This world itself is a result of the bhranti, because really speaking, there is no world different from Brahman. There is no world different from Brahman. This world is nothing but a reflection of Brahman, exactly like how the mirage water was a reflection of the sunlight because of total internal reflection. But we mistake it to be water. Similarly, this world is actually a mistake. It's a mistaken perception. This world is nothing but Brahman. So that is Bhranti Kalpita Jagat. The word Bhranti Kalpita Jagat. Kalpita means imagined. Kalpanam means imagination. In Tamil we use the word Karpanai. It's actually the Kalpana Tamilized. In Tamil very often the la becomes ra and all that for various reasons. So Kalpana is imagination. Kalpita means imagined. So Bhranti Kalpita Jagat. So the world, which is actually a product of our own delusion, our own ignorance, Kalashrayam. So that world has a dependency on Brahman. Brahman supports the world. Brahman is actually the ashraya on which the world is resting. So the Brahman is the ashrayam of the Jagat, which is a product of our illusion. Okay. So that is to tell you the relationship between the world and Brahman. Bhranti Kalpita Jagat Kalashrayam. It tells you that Brahman is the substratum on which the world is resting, and therefore the world has a dependence on Brahman, and therefore the world is mithya. So that is the chain of connections that you have to make. So when we say Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, that mithya word has the meaning of something which has a dependent existence. And by saying Bhranti Kalpita Jagat Kalashrayam, Shankaracharya wants us to know that Jagat is Mithya, Jagan Mithya. So the first line you can simply translate as Jagan Mithya, Mithya Jagat. Then Swashrayam. Swashrayam means Brahman does not need another support. Brahman can support itself. Brahman is the support for itself. Swashrayam. Okay, Swashrayam cha tad asad vilakshanam. Sad asat vilakshanam. Now, this is the very important concept in Advaitam. Sad asat vilakshanam. So, what is Sat? Sat is something which is existent. Asat is something which is non-existent. Okay, now this is at the transactional level. When we say that there is a tree out there, or there is a car out there, or there is a person standing out there, those are all existing objects. So they are all Sat. Okay. What is asat? Asat is non-existent. So what is an example for non-existence? We give some examples like human horn. Do human beings have horn? No. So human horn is non-existent. Or in Shastra we also say Shasha Shringa. Shringa again means horn. Shasha means hair, rabbit. So Shasha Shringa means rabbit horn. So I don't think rabbits have horns. Okay, so rabbit horn is a non-existent thing. Okay, and there is another very interesting example for non-existence. It is Vandhya Putraha. Vandhya Putraha. You know, Vandhya is a barren woman. A woman who cannot give birth to a child is called Vandhya. Okay. Now, Vandhya Putraha means a, a boy born to a barren woman. Okay. By definition, a Vandhya cannot give birth to a boy or girl. So, Vandhya Putraha is a non-existent entity. Yes, ma'am. You said something? Kishori ji, you wanted to say something?
No.
Okay, because you got unmuted. I was wondering. Okay, so these are all some examples. So horse horn. In Tamil we have this word kudra kombu. Kudra means horse, kombu means horn. Okay, so these are all some examples of non-existent things. They are absolutely non-existent. You cannot find them anywhere. Okay, so Brahman is neither something that you can point out as an existent thing. That means, here the word existent means that which is accessible to your organs. Again, it is the same as your Vagagocharam in the previous shloka. Okay, you cannot perceive Brahman as an object. That's what it means. That is Sad Vilakshanam. Asad Vilakshanam, so you cannot say just because I cannot perceive it with my sense organ, Brahman is not there. You cannot say. Okay, so it is neither this nor that. It is beyond these two. And I should then take you back to the Kenopanishad mantra, where the Upanishad says it is the Brahman that gives your eyes the capability to see. It is the Brahman that gives your ears the capability to hear. It is the Brahman that gives your mind to function as a mind. So you cannot be talking about a non-existent Brahman without the assistance of Brahman. You get my point? So you have all these atheists in the world who say there is no God. But what they don't realize is, even as they say there is no God, it is actually God's help and support that makes them say those sentences about God not being there. That's the irony. Okay, so that is Brahman. Sad Asad Vilakshanam. Then Nishkalam. Yes, ma'am. Shwetambriji.
So then we as human being, we exist only in this illusional world, or do we also have existence in the world beyond illusion?
There is no world beyond illusion. Please understand. That's the
Okay.
whole teaching. See, this whole Advaitam is, whenever you experience something as an object, it has a dependent existence and is therefore mithya. And you, the observer or witness of that world, is the only true entity. So you always exist. I think can you repeat exactly what you said? I want to hear that sentence again.
So you said the world is illusion, or maybe delusion, and we sense it. Then we have this physical existence in this illusional world, in this mithya. Do we also have existence beyond this?
See, you have an existence even within this illusional world by understanding that you are actually not any of the objects, but you are the self consciousness that witnesses this world, and that is the truth. That is your existence. Even as you utter this sentence, you are existing. Without you existing, we cannot do the talking.
Okay, sir, but then there is the thing that you said, there is no world beyond mithya. So we all always continue to exist in the illusional world.
No, no, no,
And
no, no,
that.
no, no. There is no world. I didn't say beyond mithya.
Mm-hmm.
I said,
Ah, okay, okay, okay.
see, mithya. See, please understand what is mithya. Now I have to go to the clarification on mithya. So we will take the same example, sat and asat. Okay, I said sat is something that exists. Asat is something that does not exist. Okay, have you understood that part?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now in Advaitam, we introduce a third category. We introduce a third category, which is neither existent nor non existent, but something in between, which we call mithya. Okay, and you have to understand that, just 2 minutes back I told that Brahman is neither existent or nor non-existent, and now I am talking about another category called mithya. So you should not confuse that Brahman is mithya. Please be very careful, because this is a very tricky thing. So when I say Brahman is neither asat nor sat, it is beyond that. What I meant is Brahman actually lends existence to all the sat vastu. So it is beyond sat. Sat in the sense the transactional sat. So like you cannot say, you cannot hold something in your hand and say this is Brahman. Brahman is not available for objectification. So that is the meaning of Sad Vilakshanam in the sloka. But when I talk about mithya, I talk about a different type of Sad Vilakshanam. That word mithya you have to understand as something which has a dependent existence. So it appears to exist, but when you analyze what exactly it is, you see there is no such thing. So the typical example we give is the pot. We always talk about the pot, pot made of clay, let's say. Yeah. Now, what is this pot? This pot is made of clay. Okay. Now, is there a pot which is different from the clay? If you take away all the clay from the pot, what will remain?
Nothing.
Yeah. So, but still you talk about a pot as though it is different from clay. So, what we say is the pot is a mithya vastu having its existence dependent on the clay. So, clay is satyam, pot is mithya in this context. In this example context, pot is mithya, clay is satyam, because clay can exist without the pot. You can have a lump of clay which is not formed into a pot or any other shape, but the pot cannot be existent without the clay. In that sense, the pot is a mithya vastu, the clay is a satya vastu, and the pot enjoys existence dependent on clay. This is mithya. Is this clear?
Yes, sir. So
Yeah.
if I've understood it, then our physical existence is dependent. It's a mithya then, and it is dependent on our Atman or Brahman, and our
Yeah.
Brahman is not dependent on anything.
Anything.
It is
Okay.
self-dependent.
Now, this whole question of do we exist in another world comes because you have somehow equated your existence to the existence of your body and mind and all that. Okay, so that is what we call, the Atma Anatma. There's a word for it. Mithuni Karanam. Satya Mithya Mithuni Karanam or something. You mix up the two. No, you have been so used to considering your body as your identification, that you think that once this body is gone, you don't exist. But that's not true, because your body, you just go back to your childhood, from the time whatever you remember when you were maybe 2 years or 3 years. From that time onwards, you remember all the stages through which you went through. Maybe you have a photo album in your house, and where you have the photographs from very early childhood until your current today. You would see that you have undergone so many changes. So that means the body has gone through so many changes. But at every stage in that life, at every stage of that photo album, you would identify yourself as the same I. That I feeling will not change at all. So there is an unchanging I within you, existing in a body that has been continuously changing. And that is true of your mind also, of your intellect also, because when you were in class 1 or class 2, you had very little knowledge, but today you have much more knowledge. So the mind that you had in your second year or third year and the mind that you have today are totally different. And at every stage you were identifying with your mind, but your mind was always changing. So what we say is, your true nature is something that never changes. Your true nature is something that never changes. That's always constant. And because the body has been changing, because the mind has been changing, that's not your real property. You know what we call inherent property and incidental property. So this body, mind, and all that is, they are all more like incidental properties. They come and go. But there is one inherent property, inherent nature of yours, which has never changed in all these years. And that is your consciousness. And that is your true nature. And all this confusion about, do I exist in the illusional world, will I have an existence in the other non-illusional world, all these are because you tend to identify your identity with your body. Yeah, there is no non-illusional world. All worlds are illusional. You know, we in the Shastras we have 14 lokas. All the 14 lokas are mithya finally. Yeah, I mean, I'll
Yes,
stop
sir.
here. I want to make sure that you're following.
Yes, I am following. But then I have only one question. So, if when I cease to exist here in this illusional world, then do I go into the next illusional world?
That depends on whether you are a jnani or an ajnani. You know,
Okay.
if you are a jnani, if you are a jnani, you will not have another janma. But then, you know, the jnani understands that his true nature is really Brahman, and that means all the bodies that you see in the world and all the worlds that exist are all floating in him. Okay, all the worlds are floating in him. So even if this one body goes off, there will be infinite other bodies and infinite other lokas which will continue to exist in the jnani. So you only shed one body, but you still have the rest of the bodies. You get that, you get the change of perspective.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, I got it.
Yeah. So as long as you are fixated to one particular body mind complex, you think you are limited by that body mind complex. But the moment you become a jnani and realize that I am really Brahman and all of this universe, all of this creation is actually floating in me. So what is the big deal if one body goes? The other bodies are going to remain anyway, right?
Yes, sir. Got it.
So that is the true understanding that will liberate you or anybody. And that is the true understanding that Advaitam tries to incorporate or instill in all of our minds, using all these examples, all these granthas, all these Upanishads and everything.
Yes,
Okay.
I got it. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Right. So we were on the third line. Nishkalam. Nishkalam means without any parts or division. So Brahman does not have any parts or division. There is no top, bottom, left, right, north, south, nothing. It is one single entity, one single indivisible entity, and that is Nishkalam. Okay. Nirupamanavadhiyat. Upamanam means a comparison. A comparison. So you can say, how does a tiger look like? You can say a tiger looks like a lion, a tiger looks like a leopard. You can give a lot of comparisons. Or you can say a tiger belongs to the cat family. These are all upamanams, comparisons. Yeah. But you cannot give any comparison to Brahman because Brahman is unique. There is no second Brahman to compare it with another Brahman. There is only one Brahman. So it is nirupamanam. Nirupamanam means that which has no comparison. Unique, one and only. That is nirupamanavat hiyat. So that is the true nature of Brahman. So that comes to 257. Of course, Brahma Tattvamasi, Bhavayatmani, the fourth line, which is common repetition. Okay. So, yeah, that was 257. What I found is we are taking somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes per shloka. So, if I start one more shloka now, it will go on for another 15 minutes at least. So, maybe it's a good time to close today's session unless we have some questions which we want to talk, maybe 5 minutes more. We are open for questions. Let me know. I'll stop my presentation. Yeah. Okay. So no one has any questions. It's all very clear. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder, this not having questions is because of complete understanding or total lack of understanding. Yes, ma'am. Shvetambri.
So
I can say
not
it was
lack of
very
understanding.
enjoyable.
Sorry.
It was very enjoyable.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So
Yes,
it is
ma'am.
not lack of understanding, but it makes you think a lot, and
Okay.
you tend to have many questions. But then you need some time to think
Yeah.
about it and then formulate the questions.
When you have a lot of questions, I'd be happy at least if one question comes my way. That keeps the session alive. Now, otherwise, if I talk for 15 minutes and nobody raises a question, I end up wondering, and then, were they really listening to me? That was the question I have. So it's always reassuring to have a question because then I know at least people are listening. Great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we'll, close today's session. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Sarvesham Swastirбhavatu Sarvesham Shantirbhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarvepi Sukhinas Santu Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you.